I paid good money for this, therefore I can't get rid of it. All right, this is a complaint that we get a lot of times from people who are hoarders, but they can't get rid of their stuff because they paid good money for it. We're going to talk about that today. I'm Angela Brown, and this is Ask a House Cleaner. This is a show where you get to ask a house cleaning question, and I get to help you find an answer. All right, so today's question comes from a woman who was all concerned because her whole entire house is full of arts and crafts that she paid good money for, and therefore she can't get rid of them. But she has this inkling in the back of her mind that she might be a hoarder. So we took a look at her stuff, and what we discovered was, yes, in fact, I think she's a hoarder. Okay, so it turns out that the inside of her house looks like a Michael's store. She has all different kinds of wrapping paper for different gifts and things that she is going to give to people. And it's more or less a wrapping paper station. She's got a great big entire wall of wrapping paper and ribbons and little gift cards and bows and little boxes and things like that. Lots and lots and lots of gift wrapping stuff. Now, if it was just for gifts, that's okay, but it doesn't stop there. It moves on to quilting. At some point or another, she was going to give every one of her grandkids a homemade quilt. I'm not sure who uses quilts anymore, maybe comforters, but okay. So she was taking all of their clothes from when they were small and cutting them up into little squares, sewing the squares together, and then she had these frames that were inside her house where you stretch the quilt over the side of these frames and you clamp them down, and then I guess you go underneath and over and you tie the quilt. So she was doing this inside her house. All right, it doesn't end there. There was another part of her house where she had a pottery station. She had spent like $5,000 for this pottery kiln and about $1,500 for a pottery spinner and all the supplies and the heat-resistant gloves and the special glazes, the glass glazes and the matte glazes and all these things. And truth be told, she made exactly 2 pieces of pottery. So she would get these harebrained ideas that she was going to become a famous pottery maker or something after she went to an exhibit where someone was selling a piece of pottery for thousands of dollars. And so in her mind, she thought, well, I can make thousands of dollars. If I make pottery, then I too will be famous and I can sell my pottery. The mentality is not twisted, and the arts and crafts creative element is not twisted. But in order to sell a piece of pottery for thousands of dollars, you have to have a lot of experience doing that, or you have to be an amazing artist or have an amazing marketing background in order to sell that. So to spend thousands of dollars to create exactly 2 pieces of pottery that then you end up storing all this equipment that you're never going to use again, and you can't get rid of it simply because you paid a lot of money for it, it then becomes a curse, not a blessing. Okay, so as we went through her house, she had a variety of different groups of arts and crafts that she one day was going to make something with. But the truth of the matter is, as the grandkids got older, she ended up spending time with the grandkids and babysitting them and whatever, and her arts and crafts kind of got pushed to the wayside. So now she has an entire house and an attic and a storage unit that are full of arts and crafts that, quite frankly, she probably is never going to get around to having the time to do. So I asked her, what is your goal for these things? Well, her goal was that she wanted to help them move on, but yet she didn't want to get rid of them because she spent so much money for them. I paid good money for this. All right, I understand the I paid good money concept, but the reality is now you have no room in your house for your grandkids to come over because every nook and cranny is filled with the next art and craft. The truth be, as we talked, over the last several years, she hadn't actually even used her wrapping paper station. She'd been giving people gift cards. So now she had this wrapping paper station. She's not even buying gifts for people to wrap anymore. So what we decided for her was that, yes, in fact, she was a hoarder. And it was good kind of hoarding. It was creative hoarding, but she had all these things she needed to help move on their way. So if you are in a scenario where you have a lot of stuff that you paid good money for, but now you're done with it and now it's time for it to go, because it's a money issue, this is a good opportunity for you to turn around and sell those items. Now, if you put an ad on, let's say, nextdoor.com, it's a neighborhood app where you can advertise and sell things to people that might be interested. Now, if you don't know who would buy a pottery kiln and a pottery spinner and all of the supplies that go along with pottery, what you may do is you may put an ad and say, hey, I'm looking for someone to work for me part-time that will help me sell all of my treasures, and either list them on eBay, because there will be a lot more buyers on eBay than there probably will be in your neighborhood. And so you might have to expand your reach just a little bit, and instead of just selling it to the neighborhood, you might be able to sell it to a school, or you might be able to sell it on eBay, or you might be able to sell it on many of the buy and swap sites that are even on Facebook. And so instead of you doing all of that yourself, because the reason she still has it is because she doesn't have time, number one, to do the arts and crafts, number two, to sell the stuff and make the listings herself. So if she were to hire someone part-time, and you can argue and say, well, that costs money to hire someone. It does, but if you sell a $5,000 kiln to someone, you will have some money coming back in where you can pay that person. And so it might be a small investment up front, but as you sell your arts and crafts and your quilting frames and all of these extra things that you're never going to use again, then it might give you a little bit of resources to go ahead and get rid of all of that stuff. So my suggestion for you would be to take a year. And I'm going to say a year because this lady has a lot of stuff. It's going to take a long time to actually sit down and to go through and make listings and sell it and pack it up and be there when people come to pick it up and all those things. So don't beat yourself up if it doesn't happen in a weekend. You did not acquire these things in a weekend. And so if you have a whole entire house full of things, it might take a year to go room by room. You may want to pick one room per month and go through and pick out a station. And on 1 month, you might get rid of the entire wrapping paper station and all of the gift boxes and the ribbons and all that stuff. And then another time, you might, in the same room, you might get rid of the quilting frames and all the little quilting squares and all the excess fabric, and decide what you're going to keep and what you're going to give away. Just because you spend a lot of money on something does not mean that it brings you value or that it brings you joy. And so as you move on through your life, your joy now is coming through spending time with your grandkids. It's not necessarily hoarding all of these arts and crafts that you now no longer have the energy or the time or the interest to pursue. So you might consider an art and craft like photography, for example, where all of your pictures are digital pictures and can be stored on one hard drive that doesn't consume your entire house space. Because going through your house, yes, you're going to go through a lot of memories and it's going to take some time, but in the process, you might get some extra money coming in. You might have a really good time meeting people who are involved in arts and crafts and different groups and organizations and whatnot. But as you purge and you clear out your life and you simplify, it's going to free up a lot of emotional investment and joy and heartache. Is it heartache when you decide that you're going to spend thousands of dollars to become a pottery maker and then you only make 2 pieces of pottery? Is that heartbreaking to see that dream washed down the drain? Yet at the same time, if you could sell that equipment to somebody who could use it, and then you can go to their art exhibit and you can experience their pottery, maybe that then brings you joy. So there is joy in passing along the stuff, but there's also joy in clearing out the clutter. And we're going to call those arts and crafts clutter because you're not using them just because you paid a lot of money, but now it's time for them to find a new home. So my suggestion to you would be bucket up, take a deep breath, plan a year on your calendar that you're going to go through every room and get rid of your stuff slowly. And in this particular instance, it's all great stuff. This is stuff that will resell. And so my suggestion is resell it to somebody who then can find a happy home for it. Alrighty, so that's my 2 cents. And until we meet again, leave the world a cleaner place than when you found it.